You're listening to the Cash Flow Academy podcast with Andy Tanner, your source for investing made easy. Here's Andy Tanner.
Welcome to the Cash Flow Academy podcast. This is your host, Andy Tanner, and this is where we do our very best to keep investing simple, keep things simple. And today, I'm excited for an education. Often I'll have things I think I know a little bit about, and we'll have a great conversation. Today, I know very little about this, and so I'm excited to get educated, but it's certainly something that is becoming more and more prominent in the zeitgeist, I guess, and it's going to be a lot of fun. We have Professor Edward Lee with us, and he is the author of Creators Take Control: How NFTs Revolutionize Art, Business, and Entertainment. And so with that, we'll hop right in. Professor Lee, thank you for being with us today.
Well, thank you, Andy, for having me on the show. It's my pleasure.
This is a new landscape. Sometimes I had someone that I guess worked with Paul Volcker once in the Reagan years, and says, "Yeah, I've been in economics for so long." No one gets to say they've been doing NFTs for 40 years. So this is a new thing for me. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then tell us a little bit about what brought you to have an interest in this new form of ownership.
Sure. I think the first thing I should say that my background is in law. I'm a lawyer and a law professor, and a specialist in intellectual property. So I'm not a finance guy. I'm not giving financial advice. I was attracted to start studying this new technology of NFTs because it intersects with intellectual property. And artists, for example, have been using NFTs, which create a form of virtual ownership for their digital artworks. And often the artworks come with an IP license, and that's one element that started to pique my interest. The other thing that piqued my interest is that I'm also a freelance photographer on the side.
Oh, wow.
So I know the challenges that independent artists face in trying to develop their business. And one of the things that is quite clear, even though NFTs have really been a hot market for only, I'd say, a couple of years, right now we're kind of in a downturn, but in terms of like the emerging market, it's only for a few years. It has created opportunities for artists, especially digital artists, that they never had before. And, that is something that I think, piqued my interest. And in the way that I describe it, I feel that this book really called me to write it, and it was not something that I had planned at the outset when I started researching it. To be honest, most of my writings are academic writings, legal scholarship. This book that's coming out is a trade book for a general audience. Probably some of your audience would find this book interesting, or hopefully so. I wasn't originally intending to write a general audience book, but then one thing led to another, and here we are, basically.
Well, this is a fascinating topic, and it's funny. I've always felt pretty connected to the new. I've always felt like I was a pretty hip guy. I always felt like new technology was something I'd always welcome and integrated with. I'm middle-aged, and so I remember the World Wide Web. It's like, cool, Netscape, yeah, this is awesome. And I remember email, great, texting, great, all this technology is great. I think this is the first one where I feel old. I'm like, okay, I don't get this. So let's start off. An NFT is a non-fungible token, and with someone I'm someone who does care about precious metals, so I understand the idea that of what fungible is, and non-fungible, very individual, right? Very unique. It speaks to the uniqueness of something, that it's not sliced up and divided. And but let's talk a little bit. So I think people understand, gold is fungible. A dollar bill is fungible. But let's talk about a different part of the word NFT. Let's talk about what tokenism is. Can you explain to us what is tokenism?
Sure. That's the theory that I developed in the book, or at least one of them. And I should preface it by saying it's a capital T tokenism,
right.
not the tokenism that is a negative kind of hiring practice. That's not what I'm speaking about. I'm speaking about capital T tokenism, which I contrast with Cubism, the major art transformation of the 20th century, often associated with Picasso, was a reconfiguration of perspective. To put it in a very simple sort of example, Cubism took the perspective of having a single point perspective, what you might see in a camera from a photograph. This was pervasive in the Renaissance with Leonardo, for instance, The Last Supper. That painting is something that, it kind of looks like what you might see from the perspective of a photograph that was taken. It is meant to be kind of realistic from a single point. What Cubism did at the start of the 20th century was to turn that on its head and say, well, no, the artist and both the artist and the viewer have multiple perspectives of the very same thing that they are representing or viewing. So it's often characterized as what you can see in a Cubist painting are cubes. That's a very kind of simplistic way to think about it, but I think for our purposes, it gives you an idea of what a Cubist painting would look like. It has layers of different multiple perspectives in the same painting. So you can see, for instance, a figure, let's say, of a woman walking down the stairs, but it has all these different layers from different perspectives. So when this first came out in the start of the 20th century, people had no idea what it was. It was so revolutionary at the time, and often, it was actually sparked a very negative reaction among traditionalists. But now we know that Cubism prevailed, and it helped spark modern art, which I think no one really questions the significance of modern art. Now to tie that into tokenism sort of does a similar thing, but for ownership of property. So when we think of property, we often, I think of it in terms of a tangible kind of property or ownership, so that you have something that you can hold on to and say, okay, that is my property. But what tokenism does is to create something that can be owned virtually. And it does it through basically a computer program called a smart contract that is recorded on blockchain. And blockchain is simply a decentralized, a public ledger that anybody can track down transactions relating to, it's called a token, but it's really lines of code. And to tie this back into what you said earlier, Andy, about the non-fungible aspect about it, it's non-fungible because there's unique line of code that makes it non-fungible. It's kind of like your passport number. No one else has the same passport number as you do. We know it has a one-to-one correspondence with the person who has the passport. I mean, that's how the government has issued its passports. It would be crazy to issue passport numbers that are the same. It would defeat the purpose of it. And that's the same logic that programmers have used in creating these non-fungible tokens. So what I characterize as tokenism is this shift to create virtual ownership where things are stored on blockchain, designating who owns the token that represents, let's say, a digital artwork. But really, we don't need to limit NFTs to digital artworks. It could be any subject matter that can be owned. So, for instance, Starbucks uses NFTs for membership in its rewards program, Odyssey. And, one convenient aspect of this in using an NFT is that you can continue to have a relationship with the owner of the NFT by airdropping them more benefits or perks that they're entitled to, or the NFT can be used to attend a gathering, a party, a social event.
Right.
So there are apps in which you can just use your NFT, and that will verify that you are a member. So that's the kind of utility that NFTs offer because they are computer programs and can be, used in various ways.
So, in the past, ownership is an interesting thing because I guess if we went back to caveman days, I own something because I have a big stick or club and I'm able to hold what I have in one hand and defend it with the other. Or maybe I take it and I barter with it in the marketplace. But as you gather more stuff and as it gets more complex, maybe say we have a deed in the evolution of ownership. And I say, well, here's a piece of paper. And by itself it's just a paper, but because the community respects it or the law respects it, I now have the word certificate come to mind. And, of course, the root word in certificate is, look, there's a certification here. There's an agreement here. This certifies that I own this law degree. This certifies that I own this gold. And so here's this gold that's in the treasury, and I have a gold certificate that says, the bearer of this is, can demand, payable on demand, $20 of gold. And I have a deed. I have a stock certificate. So you have this paper idea, and you have a paper money idea. Maybe the paper represents something behind it. A coat check for that's my coat in the cloakroom. Maybe that's a little bit non-fungible, right? It's not exchanged. It's unique to me. And in my mind, this is simply just a digital certification of ownership instead of a physical paper. But this digital certification can have certain levels of programming in it. It can be a smart contract that can have if-then statements in it. Is that a pretty fair description of this, or is that oversimplified?
No, I think it is a very helpful summary of the basic concepts of trying to shift to a virtual kind of ownership. And I think there's no surprise that this exploded during the pandemic when societies had to shift to a lot of virtual interactions. And then lo and behold, 2021, the NFT market skyrockets because the concept of a virtual ownership, I think, didn't seem a crazy idea. People thought it, I think, was probably a natural extension of a lot of virtual interactions that people had. And also going back to one thing that you mentioned that is worth noting, and I talk about this in the book, is that the first initial public offering of stocks was by the Dutch East India Company, basically a monopoly in the 1600s. And you could buy a share of stock of the company, and you didn't receive a paper share, a physical paper share. Your ownership was just recorded in kind of a ledger, but a paper ledger, and that was held by the books of Dutch East India Company. So we have had precedents in the past where ownership is understood in a way where the owner doesn't necessarily need a physical manifestation of it. It's just that I think on a day-to-day level, when we're talking about artworks, for instance, yes, the traditional art market, we have expected to have like the physical painting or print to put up in our home for decoration if we purchased a copy of it. But what is going on now with NFTs is that the physical is not even needed. And that's what's given life to this new market for digital artworks. The reason why that digital artists had no market before is the traditional art world, like the galleries, the auctions, houses, would have a hard time proving like why this one digital copy is the original. Because, as we know, with digital technology, digital copies can be made infinitely. And, it's kind of like going back to the inception of the internet, everything can be copied. But what is new about the NFT is that, no, the creator can now designate that the NFT is unique, to go back to this notion of non-fungible. And what we've seen in the past 2 to 3 years is that people understand it to be, unique, because there's this huge market. In 2021, $27 billion worth of NFTs were sold. And I like how you put it. As long as people believe it, then it is, it is real. It is something. And to go back to the Dutch East India shares of stock, that could only succeed if people believed they were buying an interest in the Dutch East India company, right? If people didn't believe it and said, well, how do I know that I'm spending money and I'm actually getting an interest in the company, then that would never have taken off. But it did. And, here we are. And, the stock market is pretty volatile these days, but no one is questioning, is the stock market real?
Sure.
That conversation is over.
Let's talk a little bit, but let's dive in just a little deeper. First, I suppose we should address this, and then I want to get into a little bit more of the property side, the ownership side, the legal side of this. But before we jump in there, I went down to this Web3 /NFT /crypto conference, and it was in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I was invited to speak a little bit on derivatives of cryptocurrencies, which I understand derivatives pretty well. I'm an options trader. I was very comfortable in giving the speech. And in crypto, I think I've studied that pretty well. Web3 to me was a head scratcher.
Yeah.
The idea that it was going to revolutionize everything. I've got to be truthful. I felt like I was in San Francisco in maybe 1991 or 1993. It was like going back in time. If people remember the web revolution, where you had Ask Jeeves or Web Crawler and everyone was using Netscape, a lot of this stuff is just gone now. And it was interesting from an investor's perspective when you talk about ownership is no one was touting the money they've made. They were touting the money they'd raised. No one was touting what they've done. They were touting what they thought they could do. And the money raises, it was interesting because people would, buy in and invest in a Silicon Valley company, not because of anything they'd produced, but because they said, well, we've already raised, $2 billion. And people would think, well, if they raise $2 billion, someone must believe in what they're doing. And a lot of it was just air. And to be quite truthful, I felt that way. I saw stuff that I don't often employ the word cockamamie, but as I went from booth to booth, I really struggled to understand the value behind what people were selling in many of these booths. For example, someone said, if you take a fungible coin, a golden eagle, for example, which is, basically people would feel gold is fungible, and one golden eagle of a certain date would be, relatively equal to another golden eagle. They said, we'll scan it with our electron microscope and find all of the different variations in this. We'll make it non-fungible. And then we'll create an NFT behind this golden eagle coin. And so it will always be yours. And as you sell this on the network, yeah, someone else might be able to buy it, but you're going to get paid every time it changes hands forever. And I thought, okay, that's cockamamie. If I go into a pawn shop, I'm going to pawn this gold coin, and no one's going to know about a virtual record of that at all. It's crazy. There's all kinds of things like that. So could you speak to, and I'll see a picture of a gorilla, which, beauty. Now here's where art is a little different, because in the world of art, value is in the eye of the beholder. There's no question. Someone gets turned on by this. But I see someone pay, $20 million for a cartoon of a gorilla, and that's a head scratcher to me. Can you kind of clarify that? Is it the greater fool theory that I say, well, does it just get bid up where it starts at $1 and someone pays $5 and someone thinks, well, I'll buy this not because I want it, but because I think someone will pay $6 for it tomorrow. I'll buy this for $10 million today because I think someone else will pay $11 million tomorrow. Is there any of that going on?
Well, certainly I think there's some of that going on. I don't know if the conference was in 2021, but
it was last year.
It was 2022. That was even during the so-called crypto winter. 2021, there certainly was a lot of hype and speculation and frothiness, and prices of NFTs have come down back to earth. There's certainly, I think, reason to do your own research, and of course, caveat emptor in terms of everything, right? Whatever investment you want to make, et cetera. You can't be, just turning a blind eye and just, investing in anything that without doing some research behind it. So that I think is a word of caution. In terms of, to go back to the Web3 aspect of it, one of the challenges I think is when we try to have change or reform, and what the Web3 proponents are seeking is a more decentralized web, and so that the big tech companies don't have so much power to control online interactions, including, ad monetization and algorithms that track your every, move on the internet. So that would be, in a nutshell, I think, one of the main aspirations of Web3. Now, I think you're right in terms of your reaction to the conference that there's a danger that becomes a buzzword, and people just throw it out there just to raise money,
right?
And are not serious about implementing some true reforms that do effectuate a more decentralized web. But at the same time, I think there are companies, there are individuals who are working to try to improve the web in a way where it is not so controlled by, the big tech companies, the social media platforms that do have a inordinate amount of power in terms of an online user's participation on social media. And so, for instance, the decisions are of whether to moderate content or deplatform a person, kick them off the platform, is largely behind closed doors, and it's largely left to each company to decide. And I think Web3 is a counter-reaction to that kind of power, where there should be, greater participation by individuals in a more at a more local level to be able to participate and decide, well, what are the rules that govern us when we interact online? So I think there are some people who are just using this term Web3 as a buzzword, and are not truly committed to it. But I think there are definitely startup companies, and there are artists and individuals who are really striving to build something better. I'm reminded of a quote from Steve Jobs. I won't have a verbatim quote of him, but he was talking about looking at things in the world and how, the people who created the stuff that you see, and let's just use online, the people who created the stuff online are really no smarter than you. And that if you wanted to, you can change it. You can make it better. You can try to improve it. And I think that insight that Jobs had, he was brilliant, right? And he's produced, so many really revolutionary technologies like the iPhone. It is something that I think is consonant with, those who truly believe in improving the web in this Web3 kind of aspiration.
Where I was a head scratcher on Web3 is they would say, well, you have a platform perhaps like, Facebook, and they say, well, you don't own your content. Once you put it up there, you put it up there, they own it. And I'm like, okay, well, I care. The power of Facebook isn't in the fact that I own it. It's the fact that it's a place that's become popular for a ton of other people. And, what do I care if I own it or not? The profitability of, being an influencer. Well, now you can be an influencer, but you own your own content. It really has to do with being popular. And so I was trying to figure out, why, owning my content on Facebook, would matter to me. So that was a bit of a head scratcher. And I guess the dust needs to settle a little bit. You had a comment.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Facebook or Meta. They just announced this week they're abandoning their integration of NFTs into Instagram. And they only spent like 4 months trying to develop this.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things about big tech companies like Facebook is that, they have, they spark a certain amount of skepticism among Web3 proponents, because as I said, like Web3's aspiration is trying to change the internet so it's not dominated by big tech companies like Facebook. So when Facebook announced that it was changing its name to Meta in October, I think it was 2021, my reaction was, well, that would be a hard sell for Facebook to pull off, because that's really not what the aspiration of sort of Web3 proponents is. And building the metaverse is, intended to be, at least among Web3 proponents, to be something far more decentralized. And I remember I was at a business conference at Berkeley, and I was reacting to some comments of people. This was in 2022. People at the conference, where their example of what they thought was being built with Web3 was like the company Meta. And my reaction, I think this was on video, so you can go back to it and quote me on it. My reaction was, Meta is not like the paragon of Web3. Meta is like is what the reaction of Web3 proponents are trying to change.
Stop. Yeah.
So
the idea of oh, I'm sorry, I didn't let you finish your thought.
No. I was done.
The strange thing, the idea of the obsession almost with decentralization, right? That I remember, this brings me back to my comment of the, remembering the 90s, of saying, people used to say, look, the televisions control everything. You got cable, a few cable channels, TV, you can't get out there. This is going to be the game changer. Television was the centralized hubs of how you got your message out, a certain number of radio stations. But now that we have the web, that's going to blow all this out. And that was true to a degree. But the thing of it is, it wasn't about this decentralization. It's about the value you produce for another person. And, wherever you go, it's going to become centralized anyway. Even in the physical world, Wall Street became Wall Street for a reason, right? It was the place you went to do certain things. And even in a metaverse, there's going to be places where people, gather and centralize to do certain things, I would think. Tell me a little bit about enforcement. I know our time's running short. Are you okay on time for a couple more questions?
Sure. I can speak a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, I could speak for a little bit more.
I guess I'm a content creator, as an author would be the the best way. And it was funny. I got a thank you letter from a person who had from the Philippines, and apparently they picked up my book in their native language. And I thought that's interesting because I've never had it published in that language. So I have books all over the world that are pirated that people will take and just simply copy, and they'll copy the trade dress, and they'll sell these books to people. I haven't fought it because really, how do I hunt down whoever pirate is in the Philippines? So I guess if we went to a digital world to where paper becomes obsolete, okay, great. I have an NFT. It's unique. I now, same as an artist, I would suppose. But how do you enforce any of that? It just seems in the digital world, it's very difficult globally for the small artist. Someone takes your digital art and they copy it. Someone in the Philippines copies it perfectly, right down to the pixel. And, they use their AI to do it or whatever. And then they put it out there as their own NFT. And so you have two different digital addresses, two different digital, unique codes, but they represent the same thing I would see on my computer. And you say, no, that was mine, I'm first. Okay, what are you going to do about that if someone in India is messing with your stuff? What are you going to do about that?
Well, I think, Andy, that's an ongoing issue with digital technologies. What I think that NFTs do that we've seen already in the past 2 to 3 years is potentially change the economics of those copies. So the NFT provides what you mentioned before, a certificate or authentication of the provenance of the genuine artist's work. So let's say there's a famous artist in this space, Tyler Hobbs. Fidenza NFTs have done really incredibly well. Mm-hmm. If somebody in some other country copied his artwork and started selling the NFT, a different NFT, the buyers would be able to know that what they are buying is not the authentic art. It's just a fake art. And I think it's quite clear in the market that the value of a fake is, paltry compared to the value of the original NFT, the authentic NFT. Now that doesn't eliminate the copyright. You'd have to try to enforce it as you are asking by sending a notice to the marketplace on which it is available. So that's the more traditional route of trying to do what's called a DMCA notice to say, okay, remove that from your marketplace because it infringes my copyright. But the other aspect of it that is new is that the economics now are far different, so that even some artists are allowing all of these unauthorized copies to exist because and be sold as NFTs because the value of the fake is so small compared to the value of the original. And I'll just use one other example so that your audience could, check into this more if they'd like, is that probably the top NFT collection is called the CryptoPunks. And the highest CryptoPunk sold for $23 million. And routinely others sell for $1 million or more. There are about 100 or more copy versions, either derivative works or mirrored imaged, reverse imaged representations of the CryptoPunks. Those are, some of them sell for, let's say 1,000 or so, or it could be even less. But the owner of the copyright is not trying to stop those copies. And some would argue, it's kind of like free promotion. It kind of shows the status as a blue chip project if others are trying to imitate you. The reason why I think this can operate is that the NFT is able to identify the original or authentic creation, so that, if somebody wants to spend money on the copycat version, they can, but, would that be a good investment compared to, the investment in the original?
I guess I'm trying to figure out, the expansion. I totally get it with, for example, in video games, in the virtual world, someone designs a set of armor or weaponry, and it only exists in a virtual world, but yet there's value there because kids are all connected, and it's much like fashion, right? Hey, I have this armor, it was built by this awesome artist, and this is mine, and you get to show it off. And, I totally see the value there. Where I'm having a hard time connecting is in the idea of piracy of a book. A person wants to read the words, and if the words are identical and they're exactly the same, they're not going to care whether it's a copy or whether it's a real thing, because the experience would be no different. And they're not showing this as, oh, I have this, Christian Dior dress that, is authentic, or my Prada is real. It's not a fake Prada. It's a real Prada. I can see it in the artwork world, but I have a hard time seeing it in terms of information, where, an author or a song, if you're listening to the song and someone copies the song and pirates it, who cares? It's the same song. My experience of as a consumer is the same. And the only way I see, it's a strange world. Does that make sense? I mean, it seems like there's a limit to, the value of an NFT. I suppose in the new world, I suppose there'll be a lot more, the art isn't that you hang on your wall. It's, you look on a TV maybe, but it's sure an interesting world, and trying to sort out what is valuable to people in the eye of the beholder it's just a fascinating time, because some of it I say, okay, that makes sense. My kid wants this certain weaponry and armor in his video game, and he can, buy that, and the creator gets paid, and that seems great in that virtual world. When you bring it into, try to meld that in some of the things that are more physical, a house, a car, what have you, it seems like the system we have has worked pretty well. I don't know that having, replacing a title and, the county ledger with NFTs to sell a house is any different. It's an interesting time. What should people know? If you had a comment, go ahead. But the book we're discussing, it's an important book called Creators Take Control: How NFTs Revolutionize Art. We talked a little bit about that. Business and entertainment. Tell us what people need to know. Why do they need to purchase this book? And what do people need to know about the future of NFTs so they don't get left behind?
Well, thank you for this question. I think people should buy the book to understand how there is this new kind of virtual ownership that is being used by artists. It's being used by businesses like the NBA Top Shot for digital collectibles, Starbucks for its rewards program, and also, by the entertainment industry in various independent filmmakers, independent musicians using NFTs as a way to fundraise. And the potential is vast. The potential of using a virtual token to interact with people who own the token is something that is going to keep on growing as businesses develop various uses.
Fantastic stuff. We've been speaking with Professor Edward Lee, the author of Creators Take Control: How NFTs Revolutionize Art, Business, and Entertainment. You can also go to creatorstakecontrol.com is the website for the book. And I thank you for enlightening us a little bit, and I think I gained a little bit more knowledge about NFTs. So you've been listening to the Cash Flow Academy podcast. We've been talking about NFTs with Professor Edward Lee. I hope you enjoyed our conversation. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the Cash Flow Academy podcast with Andy Tanner. For more information on investing made easy, go to thecashflowacademy.com.